alone, no chaperone can get our number. The world's in slumber, let's misbehave. There's something wild about you, child, that's so contagious. Let's be outrageous, let's misbehave.
In 1937. This is a great screwball comedy. This is definitely one of my favorite all-time screwball comedies. It mixes slapstick and rapid-fire dialogue with hilarious relationship issues. In this movie, it was Grant's persona that was finally perfected, in large part due to the director Leo McCarey. McCarey was a veteran director. He learned comedy at Hal Roach Studios, writing gags for the R Gang series, and he was responsible for pairing Laurel and Hardy. In talkies, he worked with the biggest stars, Valeria Swanson, W.C. Fields, Mae West, and he directed the Marx Brothers, which is a feat in and of itself. And it was their best comic performance in Duck Soup. For today's film, McCarey turned his attention to an old 1922 Broadway play. He dusted off this moldy play called The Awful Truth, which had already been filmed twice before, and he wasn't Columbia's first choice as director. They had originally offered it to Tay Garnett, who declined, and he must have been very disappointed because McCarey won his first Oscar for this. The superb screenplay was written by Vinya Del Mar, a playwright novelist who had had a big hit with her best-selling novel, Bad Girl. So she was perfect for giving the framework for a screwball comedy. And she had also, with her husband, just written the screenplay for McCarey's Make Way for Tomorrow. And Del Mar received an Academy Award for Writing nomination for today's film as well. In The Awful Truth, and this is not a spoiler alert here, you're going to learn this in the first few minutes anyway. It's about a wealthy Manhattan couple who believe each other. The other has been unfaithful. And on their journey, they learn the truth about their feelings toward each other. It stars Cary Grant. Cary was a contract player at Paramount. He was looking good, performing well, but he lacked the persona of a superstar. It wasn't until The Awful Truth where McCarey brought out the best in Cary, and we got to know Cary as the superstar that he had become. He was, I still think, the greatest comedic actor of all time.
Yeah.
McCarey especially worked with Cary to develop physical and verbal mannerisms that Cary adopted as his signature style from that point forward. But the thing that a lot of people don't know, that a lot of those mannerisms were McCarey's own mannerisms, and McCarey and Grant shared a physical resemblance. They were both tall, handsome, thick, lustrous hair, large expressive eyes, and Grant mimicked McCarey's intonations and expressions, and as we know, to great effect. This first movie, where Cary was asked to improvise, did not start out that well. McCarey had a reputation for kind of throwing out a script, starting over, and asking people to improvise. And Cary loved the structured setting, and he actually wanted to get out of the movie. He wanted to quit. He was willing to pay back his advance. He wanted to get out of it, but the studio would not have that. The thing that Cary learned, though, was he was actually really good at improvising. So much so that in next film, Bringing Up Baby, which we showed last year, Grant suggested one of the cinematic's most iconic scenes. If you remember, he pulled off he had stepped on the back of Katharine Hepburn's gown, and he had to stand behind her and kind of walk with her to hide her behind, and that turned out to be one of the most iconic scenes, and he improvised that based on something that actually happened to him. For this film, Grant was paid $50,000, but we also need to talk, of course, about his co-star, Irene Dunne. This was the first of 3 films co-starring her and Cary Grant. She had just starred in the screwball comedy masterpiece Theodore Goes Wild the year before, and she received an Academy Award nomination for that as Best Actress. But she still had misgivings about comedy as not being as prestigious as musicals and dramas. But director McCarey actually picked her because he saw the possibilities of the comic effect of seeing this refined, beautiful, elegant person in screwball situations. Dunne also was an independent, non-contract player. She had it written into her contract that for every comedy film that she did, she'd also sing. You'll note that there are 7 musical episodes, and they're all done for comic effect and to advance the plot. We're going to talk more about that a little later after the movie. Art director for this film was Stephen Gosson, and The Awful Truth is considered probably his most important film. He also received the Academy Award in art direction the same year for Lost Horizon, another great classic. The sumptuous Art Deco sets that you're going to see today were created by Lionel Banks, the production designer. The details are showcased on the big screen in a way that you don't get to see on even on a big home screen screen. And speaking of details, if you saw the Easy Turn toaster on our display table in the entrance, it's on the breakfast table with Irene Dunne as Lucy and her Aunt Patsy, so watch for that. Columbia's costume designer, Robert Kalloch, he created Irene Dunne's magnificent wardrobe, and the clothes you're going to see were the most elegant and most expensive worn by her to date in the film. This film was a big hit. Audiences and critics loved it, as they still do. It was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, 1 for director. Although Grant didn't get a nomination, his persona was a charming, physically confident, significant, slightly ironic, sophisticate was set.
The film critic Andrew Saris has defined the exact moment that Cary Grant's screen persona was perfected. And it's at the beginning of the film where Cary Grant sits on the back edge of a sofa, and his feet are set on the chair of the sofa. Imagine the balance that takes. He's very quiet, and yet you can just see all these emotions going across his face. And this just goes on and on through this film. The physicality, the physical confidence in him. He is compared with later Burt Lancaster, another acrobat, who also had supreme physical confidence that is interwoven through all his performances. But you see it as Jerry Warner, where he's playing with the dog. You see it when the piano lid falls on his hand and he goes to the floor. When he is doing the jujitsu, he's gonna get in and find Lucy with the piano teacher, and so he has to do jujitsu and he's thrown on the ground. I mean, the guy is a comic master.
Amazing. This movie was just such a pivot for him to where he just owned the screen. He was such a master of dialogue with his physicality. Just the timing, the acrobatic timing was so well applied toward the comedy.
And they talk about Cary Grant's persona. What does that mean? You hear that phrase bandied about. To me, it means that there is a charm, a lightness, a devil-may-care attitude, but underlying that is deep emotion and a strong intelligence. He also is a gorgeous, handsome leading man who asks us and invites us to laugh at him.
And you gotta laugh at him, and he's so uninhibited, and Leo McCarey was able to just draw that out to get him to feel confident to do that improvisation, and it really shows throughout the film here.
Well, yes, indeed, and of course his co-star Irene Dunne, amazing.
She's a triple threat. She's comedic, she can play musical, she can play tragedy, and she, for this movie, received a nomination, and she was nominated for Theodora Goes Wild for this.
I love that screwball comedy, Theodora Goes Wild,
And
wonderful.
Leo McCarey, he picked her out because he knew that she was this sophisticated, beautiful, elegant woman, and she could play the comedy, and putting her into these screwball moments was amazing. And the music, she actually started her career trying to be an opera opera singer for the Metropolitan Opera, but as good as her voice was, she was a little bit light in the voice and was not able to sing in the opera at the Met, but she was able to pivot to the musicals, and we're the better for it.
She is fantastic, and she's so well dressed, she's so refined, she's so calm until she lets loose.
And when she puts her unfaithful husband through the ringer, he suspects her, but we know that he was the one supposedly in Florida selling, bringing over the California oranges, so we know he's guilty as can be, but he's the one with suspicion.
Right, exactly. And of course, she got an Academy Award nomination, as did co-star Ralph Bellamy. And Ralph Bellamy plays such a pivotal role in this film because he is a comic foil to Cary Grant. He is the high contrast, so we can appreciate all of Jerry Warner's characteristics and how wrong the other guy is for her.
You mean every girl doesn't want her fiancé to have his ma as his best friend?
That's right. You know, and Ralph Bellamy also, he reprises that role when he performs the same love triangle third leg in His Girl Friday.
With Ma along again.
Yes, that Howard Hawks film. I mean, he is a master at playing dull and boring, and even though he is a handsome guy himself, but he's got that perfected. He has this vulgarity and crassness of the nouveau riche, as he describes. You know, he's gotten his money with the oil drilling, and that's another element that is very common in screwball comedy, and that is the spoof, the satire on the wealthy.
So here everybody was rich.
Right, that's what's different. You usually have a cross-class conflict, not here. They're all rich. However, there are different aspects of rich. You have the Leesons, Dan and his ma, and they are nouveau riche. They're crass, vulgar, they're rubes from the country and unattractive. You have the Vances, who are old money rich. They're snobby and stuffy. They're no fun. And then you have the Warners. Lucy and Jerry are stars, and they seem foolish and idle. I mean, here she's going to just allow this car in the middle of the Depression to roll off the road. That is how frivolous she is.
They all come off looking pretty bad.
They do, and I think Depression audiences loved that because they needed the respite. Like today's audiences, they were fascinated with how the rich live, what they wear, where they go, and at the same time, there's a repulsion. And we feel good when the rich get knocked down a peg or two. And here you see it.
Definitely. And this whole element of the screwball of comedy of remarriage, this
Yes.
is the perfect setup for that.
Right, that's a very common element that you find in screwball comedy, and it's quite clever of the writers of screwball comedy to develop that kind of plot device, because what it does is it allows the movies to involve more mature characters and more adult issues. When you have teenagers falling in love, you know, there's only so much that can be done, and it really allows much more depth. And divorce is a very weighty, heavy issue, and it's a counterbalance to the frivolity of all the screwball comedy.
It definitely is. And speaking of the frivolity, the music here is used in a unique way for screwball comedy, because the music on each of the, I think, 7 episodes of music are very specific for comic effect. I mean,
Right.
you talk about the Leesons not being fitting in. When he's on the dance floor, he is absolutely tone deaf to anything going on around him, and Cary Grant is reveling in as he plays the conductor. Let's do a little encore here.
Well, exactly. I mean, that music, that dancing he's doing a quasi-square dance in a nightclub in Manhattan. He is making such a spectacle of himself. He's stepping on her feet that literally they clear the dance floor.
And then he continues singing with her.
Oh, Home on the Range.
And that's another Leo McCarey improvisation. Ralph Bellamy, as I understand it, said, I can't sing a note. So what does Leo McCarey do? Has him sing with beautiful voice of Irene Dunne next to
Of
me.
course, and what it does is it further supports, we know that this man, Dan, he's all wrong for Lucy. We know Jerry's the right man. And the dancing, the singing, you can just see that dissonance, that conflict, and the musical numbers help support that.
Yeah, and usually music is used for courtship leading up to things. Here, it was all up to the climax of the chaos with the radio, and we know as they're coming up to the mountain that until the chaos stops, they need to be together. And then it
Exactly.
all comes to a nice resolution from
Yes.
a musical standpoint. And that's the genius of Leo McCarey, his musicianship, his all-round background, for him to be able to add those layers to the screwball comedy.
And that's what makes this film a masterpiece.
We're all alone, no chaperone can get our number. The world's in slumber.